Hi, I'm Tom Donahue, your moderator tonight for PEG TV's live coverage here on Channel 21 of the Mayoral Forum for Rutland City. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. I want to say that PEG TV is one of those tremendous assets we have in this community. We're so fortunate to have it. We're going to give you a lot of information tonight by the two candidates running for mayor, both Michelle Messier and David Allaire. We're going to talk about some issues tonight, but we also want to remind you, get out and vote on March 5th, Tuesday, March 5th. Do not forget to get out and vote. By the way, the polls are open now. You can do the early voting at City Hall. So in case you're concerned about the weather like tonight, you can go to City Hall at any time during their opening hours, and they'll escort you into a booth of your own, and you can vote early. So I don't want to say vote early and often, but we will say vote early. And if not, be there on the polls on March 5th. Subsequent to that, at 7 p.m., we'll be doing a live election night coverage right back here on Channel 21 on Comcast, as well as pegtv.com. And quite often we'll be streaming on social media too, so watch us on Facebook as well. I want to also just take this opportunity before we get started to thank the folks involved in this great production tonight. We have both Tom Leopold, of course the director here at PEG TV, as well as Chris McCormick, Nancy Donahue, Bryn Doan, Chelsea Tice, who's the Channel 21 PEG TV program coordinator, I might add, for this program tonight and all programs on Channel 21, the government channel. And then Amber Dumas, Daniel Eppelt, and Missy Delahanty. So I want to thank them tonight for bringing this to you live and then helping you make your decision on March 5th. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to my kids who will be watching tonight, Chris, Lindsay, and Sarah, and our grandkids are watching tonight too. So they're tuned in, and I want to say hello to all of them. The reason I mention that is they're fifth and sixth generation Rutland Vermonters, and one of the reasons that we're here tonight is to talk about the future, talk about the fifth and the sixth generation Vermonters. And the two gentlemen who are here to talk about that tonight, that want to be the next mayor of the city of Rutland to address the future for Rutland City, are Michelle Messier and David Allaire. So with that, what we're going to start with is an opening remark from each candidate. Then we're going to go to a series of questions. Each one will have 4 minutes to answer, and the opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal, if they so choose. And we'll go like that throughout the evening, and by the end, we hope that you'll have plenty of information to make a good decision on March 5th, just a short time away. So with that, let's go to, we're going to call him Mike for the moment. A lot of folks around Rutland know him as Mike. We're going to go to Mike Messier, and we're going to give you, Mike, the opportunity for up to a 4-minute opening remarks.
Well, Tom and Dave and audience and home members, welcome to our neighborhood. We're going to have some fun here tonight talking about the community and what we can do for the future of Vermont. You know, Tom had mentioned fourth, fifth, or sixth generation. Actually, in my case, it's 16th, 17th, and 18th generation that I'm looking forward to. We've been here since 1609 in the Valley with 3 of my great-grandfathers with Samuel D. Champlain, and I've done a lot of history, and we have a lot invested in this Valley, and that's one of the reasons that I'm here this evening, is because I've seen the past, I've learned about the past, I'm looking to the future of my children, my grandchildren, and hopefully my great-grandchildren all the way down on through. Rutland is a fabulous place to raise a family. My 2 children went to the local schools. Myself, I started at Lincoln Elementary School, and then I went to Rutland Town for a few years. I went to Mount St. Joseph Academy and graduated there in college prep. I then attended the University of Vermont, studied computers, and graduated with a degree in accounting. From there, I went to St. Michael's College and got a master's with a concentration in finance. And finally, I went to Albany Law School, started law school, but then we had kids, so that was kind of put on the back burner for a while. I've been a taxpayer for over 30 years now. I've been basically in the real estate business. On my primary residence, I've basically rehabbed 4 complete properties and built my own home in Rutland. So I understand the struggles of the average Vermonter, the average Rutland citizen when it comes to the economy, when it comes to education, when it comes to paying the bills. You know, we are the second highest taxed state in the country, according to a number of studies. And Rutland is somewhat unique, I believe, because our average property value is lower than, let's say, Chittenden County, Franklin County, Addison County, south of Middlebury, Glens Falls, White River, Manchester. Unfortunately, we're a little bit lower in the appraised and market value of properties. And that creates an issue for having to borrow or wanting to borrow against your property's value to send a child to school, so basically to refinance your property. So basically what we've had is a flattening of equities, in some ways a reduction in equities. Now, I think we're starting to turn the corner. I see some positive things on the horizon. I see some local investments. I just hope that we can spread those investments over everybody's home as opposed to like pocket development. Let's see if we can come up with unique strategies through whether it's weatherization, the RHA, and the other housing authorities to provide low or smaller loans so people can fix up their properties and then not necessarily ratchet up that appraisal right away. So beautification projects, rain gardens, which would help with clean water, and any of those types of projects. Let's work with the taxpayers. The next thing I'd like to say is that, you know, Rutland is a great place. And I like to think about the old saying, treat one another as you would like to be treated. And sometimes I can tend to be a little bit aggressive, I guess is the way I would describe it. And it's somewhat daunting for me to even to go into City Hall and get a response. And what I mean by that is I have to go to more than one place oftentimes to find the answer that I'm looking for. And the individuals that are there don't have all the answers, and I don't expect them to. But what I would like to say is that we need to remember we're all in this together. And so we need to work together, welcome one another into City Hall, welcome one another into our homes and into our communities, and be positive as to what we can do with Rutland. Make it a better place, take what we have and make it great. Thank you.
Mike, thank you very much, and you timed that perfectly. 4 minutes, thank you.
4 minutes.
Okay. So, Mayor David Allaire, opening remarks, please.
Well, thank you very much. So, good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you. I wanted to take a minute to thank PEG TV once again for putting on the forum tonight. They do a great job here. And to you, Tom, for moderating the discussion once again.
Thank you.
And most importantly, I wanted to thank everyone out there in watching at home and paying attention to some of the remarks and some of the things that we're going to say tonight, because it's important. It's important to be informed. It's important when you go to the polls, really in only 6 days. So I want to thank you for that. I want to ask everyone to take just a minute to think back 2 years, to February of 2017. The city was in turmoil. City budget was late being approved by the aldermen, and it had a substantial increase that was provided by the mayor. It was up at one point $2 million before the Board of Aldermen narrowed that down to $1.2 million. The fire department was having all sorts of issues, and they were mostly leadership issues. And of course, we all remember we were divided by the refugee issue. So fast forward to today, we're in a very, very different place. There is hope and there is optimism for the future. Projects are being completed. I'm going to give you 2 examples. White's Pool, which has been enjoyed by thousands of people over this last summer, and I had an opportunity to go there several times and enjoyed it greatly. And the Center Street Marketplace Park, something that had been languishing for years, and we got to work, we got it completed. It's a great space. We're going to be using it quite a bit in the upcoming years, especially in the good weather. New businesses are opening. We've had, just in the last couple of months, we've had Tasso's in downtown Rutland, brand new sit-down restaurant. Of course, Five Guys up on the hill, which I think looks as though hundreds of people are enjoying. Starbucks project is moving forward. We're very excited about that. Just had discussions with the developers over the last couple of days. That's moving forward. And there's an Indian restaurant that's moving into the old TD Bank North building up on North Main Street. Those are all very positive developments. And of course, we're working very hard on the new hotel, which we hope will be developed in downtown Rutland. And we should find out within the next 30 to 60 days, one way or the other, whether the new market tax credit program is going to help. Switching gears very quickly, I just want to mention, and you brought up going into City Hall. You know, we have some very talented people serving, not only as department heads, but talented people working all across city government. And I'm very proud of all of those people. They're working hard, and they're working hard for the citizens of this city. But yeah, we do have challenges. We're always going to have challenges. Every community does, especially older communities. But you know, there's a couple of things that I can point to. I do know that real estate values are up. I think you mentioned that. Talking to the real estate professionals and seeing the transfers in the building and zoning department, properties moving. That's a very positive sign. Just came from across the way. We had a presentation from the city police department about the crime stats for the last several years. Crime statistics are down. Those are quality of life issues. Those are important for moving our city forward. So I think that those are very good things to point to. So how I feel is we're primed to move the city forward. I'm honored and humbled to serve as your mayor. But most importantly, we're working in an open, honest, and transparent way. And you know, you're going to know about the good, and you're going to know about the bad. There's no backroom deals going on. Everybody knows what's going on in City Hall. I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start actually with an opening question, and we'll start with Mike, and then what we'll do is then we'll go back and forth so that each one has a chance to be asked first, if you will. So Mike, we'll start this opening question. I can repeat it for the mayor after, but it's a simple one. This is maybe the softball of the night. What do you see as Rutland City's biggest challenge?
The low number of new job creations and transportation. And I'm going to default to transportation. And I'm going to suggest that back in the 50s, I-92, which is an east-west corridor from basically the Northway in New York to Vermont, was proposed. Rutland, the state of Vermont, did its job from Fairhaven to Rutland. As you're all aware, Route 4, new Route 4. We need to work with our senior senators, congressmen of Vermont and New York and New England, and all the way to the president, and push for that road to be completed from Fairhaven to the Northway. Transportation is the key to bringing in those jobs. I hear time and time again by the truck drivers. I see a number of truck drivers that have difficulty in the confines of Rutland, but as importantly on Route 4. Now, if you go back in history, it's kind of ironic. The road that actually goes from Fairhaven, Whitehall, to the Northway, the Hudson, is actually the oldest path to have been recorded, to have been in existence, and exists in a 1632 map, and you can check my Facebook. It was actually mapped by Samuel D. Champlain because it was a Native American trading route that basically ran from southern Lake Champlain to the Hudson. So you could go from the St. Lawrence to Montreal, Montreal down the Richelieu, Richelieu, Champlain, Champlain to the Hudson, all the way to New York City. So before railroads, before roads, that path was instrumental to trade and was really the foundation of why Rutland, to a certain extent, exists, because of the geographic location and being a hub of the railroad. They followed basically the low water areas near Otter Creek and the backwaters where it was flat and easy to construct the railroad. And that railroad, as we're aware, linked New York City, Boston to Montreal. So many of the older buildings that we see here in Rutland were the direct result of the commerce that the railroad provided to the area, and the jobs, and the trade. So I believe what we need to do is, once again, work to improve that transportation. Now, we can take transportation and bring it to the next level. Nowadays, there's transportation of electrons everywhere. And so we need to ensure that there's high-speed internet so people can telecommunicate. This broadcast that you're watching this evening, some of you are streaming it. That's using basically electrons. You can hear me, see Dave, see everyone in the room, and that's because of electrons. And so how can we take that electronic society, Facebook, Twitter, streaming live, and all those things, and bring them together and have people work and live in Rutland and telecommunicate? I know I do that for my job. I have clients basically from around the world now that I deal with, and it's all because of electronic communications. Now they're talking about 5G. There's a couple pockets in and around Rutland and pockets in and around the Route 4, Route 7, and other corridors where you lose a signal. That should not be acceptable nowadays. That needs to be improved. We need to work with the federal government, we need to work with the state government to improve that cell phone and internet and smartphone service. It's basically what they refer to as higher bandwidth. You hear a lot of discussion about 5G. It's basically just the technology rolling over to the next level. Now, by way of history, I worked for a place called American Tower, and what we did is we owned and then leased out the tower space for cell phone companies. So I have a lot of experience in cell phone tower and communications. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Even left 9 seconds on the clock. Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So Mayor, the question is, and this is, like I said, that maybe the softball of the night, but because we'll get into some good questions here shortly. But we thought we'd establish, what do you see as Rutland City's biggest challenge?
So, speaking with the business owners and the community at large, and just having lived here, all these years, we've seen an incredible population decline over the last several years, which has affected, a lot of the Northeast states, certainly the state of Vermont, but it's affected Rutland County in the city, and that is making it difficult for the jobs that are available to be filled. Because the people that are still here and enjoying the quality of life, enjoying all the things that we all really think highly of here and why we stay here, the folks that are here not necessarily trained for the jobs that are available. A lot of them are in the at GE or up at the hospital, and not necessarily the folks are going to be trained for those. So the decline of population, workforce development is huge. I think it's an issue that's been addressed both at the state level, and we're certainly working on it down here in the city of Rutland for the Workforce Investment Board, the WIB, something that I'm a board member, and we're working very closely with the state, trying to develop our workforce and work with the local schools and be able to train the people that we have here. So those are huge. We've been the city of Rutland has put in quite a bit of money into our marketing effort, and again, that is to attract people and young families to come to the city of Rutland. We see little bits and pieces of some successes. It's a long-term effort. It's not something it's going to happen in 1 or 2 years. I think we're in it for the long haul. It's going to be a 5 or 10 year effort, but we're dedicated to it. I talk to people, I think that they're convinced that that's the way to go. Some of the other communities are jumping on board, so it's a community-wide effort. It's a collaborative as far as the county. So those are all challenges, certainly. Mentioning transportation, been involved with a lot of the areas of transportation over the years, as you know, Tom, both in the railroads as far in the airport. Airport's a huge asset that we have here. Been working for a long time, for the last, unfortunately, 20 years to try to get the train up to Burlington, and we think the Ethan Allen will finally see its destination up in Burlington in the next 2 to 3 years, and that's going to be a huge economic advantage for us, transporting people back and forth. Not just to Burlington, but be able to get them up to Montreal eventually. So it's going to be a way to move people around. So that should help a lot.
And so with the way the format's going to work tonight is that we're going to allow an opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal if the candidates desire. So with that, we'll go to Mike and say, Mike, is there any rebuttal to that?
Sure, and I agree, Dave, with a lot of what you said, and I believe that airport is a substantial asset. I think we need to work to get additional flights out. We have the one that goes to Boston. We need to get one that potentially would go to Montreal and the major hubs out there. I think that we need to realize, though, that airport is never going to be a real cargo airport, for lack of a better description. So it's going to be difficult to get an Amazon or someone that relies upon air freight into the area. So that's why I default back to, once again, the roads and that improvement from Fairhaven to the Northway, and then eventually from Rutland to 89 and 91, that corridor as well. It is critical and crucial to this area to providing transportation so the goods and services can be produced and then brought to market.
Thank you, Mike. Mayor?
Could I just rebut real quick, just on a couple of those things?
You have a whole minute.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So I actually had an opportunity to meet with the officials from Cape Air just yesterday. They were in the office, and they're going to be re-upping the essential air service here in the fall. And they're going to be unveiling a new airplane. and it's just really exciting. It's a slightly larger plane. It's a twin-engine prop that they're going to be able to not only increase and develop the service we have to Boston, but they're looking at other markets too. And as far as freight goes out of the airport, it's funny that there's quite a bit of a product that moves out of that airport. Both FedEx and I believe UPS uses that airport also to move their freight all around the country. So it's a real economic engine for this area. It's only going to grow so big. We're defined by the geographical area, but it's very important for the city of Rutland.
Excellent. Thank you both. So we're going to start with the next question, but we'll start with David Allaire this time, and then we'll go back and forth. So the second question now is goes like this. Voters in South Burlington will be voting on a proposal to increase their existing local option tax. Mm-hmm. In the Rutland Herald this week, a local option tax for Rutland was discussed. If elected mayor, is this an idea that you intend to propose?
So several months ago at the Board of Aldermen level, there was a discussion about non-property tax revenue. And how can we find a way to fund, some of the capital improvement needs that we need and just the ongoing efforts of city government and not continue to place the burden on the property tax. And there was several ideas that were floated around. Most of them didn't really amount to enough to make a huge difference. So although I don't believe the local option tax per se was raised as far as a discussion point. I have mentioned it a couple of times offline to people, and I believe also I just mentioned it the other day in the article that was in the Rutland Herald. I believe it was today that at some point after this election that the discussion is going to have to be had about whether or not city taxpayers, city voters would be open to a local option tax. Our former treasurer, Wendy Wilton, took a look at that before she left. I know back in the last election, one of the candidates, Mike Coppinger, talked about a local option tax. At the time, I didn't feel it was the right thing because I wanted to explore all the other options. But it would appear that the only one that's really has any legs and is going to be able to raise enough revenue to make a difference, it would be a 1% local option tax. Right now, across the state of Vermont, I'm not sure how many communities actually have that in place, but it's more than it ever has been. And I think more and more people are realizing that there's an opportunity there. And as much as I would like to see efficiencies in city government and try to reduce spending as we go along, a lot of the costs are fixed. A lot of the things that go on an ongoing basis is hard to reduce. So I would say that I am open and willing to have that discussion once I'm elected. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, do you want me to repeat the question, or you got it?
No, I believe I have it. Here's how I will start. In accounting, there's a concept called matching, and it's really basically matching the use with the revenue. I'm going to start with roads or transportation. If the road repair, maintenance, paving, and other things would solely be on the back of the property taxpayer, you can envision a scenario where a property taxpayer may not even have a car, they may walk. There's not a matching. Where there's a matching is with gas and or other fees or taxes like that. So as a person would travel through, a local resident, they would pay some tax. Our visitors, our tourists would pay some tax because they're using our roads. They're using our infrastructures. The next concept I'd like to talk about is operating and capital budgets. There's a difference, and the difference is basically operating expenses and budgets are normally 1 year duration, so they'll last 1 year. You can think of at your own home, like consumables, toilet paper, electricity, it's used every month, the cable bill and all those things. It's basically, you use it, it's disposable, it's gone within a year. Capital is longer lasting. There's a couple bond issues on the ballot. I think the total is $10.4 million, okay? So capital can last for generations. I know we happen to have a home that's 350 years old that was once owned by my family, so that's how long a house can last. You pay a 30-year mortgage, but then you get another 320 years that it lasts on top. Some of the infrastructure, some of the pipes in this city, down on 4th Street and South Street area, I know specifically, go back to the Lincoln age, right? 150 years, okay? That's how long those lasted, okay? So streets and the water department, other departments, work on those capital improvement projects, okay? I don't think they're being captured in the current budgeting and planning system as capital investment. I believe they're rolling through operational expenses. So an example, in streets and roads, they may work plowing, sanding, salting, and the rest of it. But then the same group or a subset of that group may go out and repair a pipe or a culvert or something like that. That could last as long as 150 years, maybe longer. So what would happen is that takes pressure off the operating budget, the operating expenses, that annual amount that we would look to property taxes for, and it moves it to a capital expenditure, and it's paid for by, as an example, these bonds that are being raised, $10.4 million. Now, we can name the streets. We're looking at Library Avenue as a place where curbs, Lincoln, Church. There's streets and Meadow Street as an example. There are a number of these places that are going to get these capital infusions. Now, we have roughly 160 employees. Do we track those 160 employees' time, hours, payroll, expenses, and associate those with capital projects? So an example, ballpark. An employee may earn $1,000 gross a week. 500 may be in long-term work, capital infrastructure improvements. 500 may be operating expenses. The commissioner of DPW is another example. How much time does he spend working on long-term projects, infrastructure investments versus operating? And then how much of his salary is captured in capital versus operating? So it's just summarily, it's a simple accounting principle. The City of Rutland's annual report, and I hope it comes out soon, I think it was due in November, and I went looking for it. It's not available electronically. Hopefully it's going to be available soon. Is about 170 pages. Burlington, Vermont's financial report is 170 pages with clear and clean asset and liability balance sheets, sources and uses of cash and capital, and operating expenses as well. And it's very detailed, so it's easy to look through, and it is, I would suggest, more transparent. So by way of best practices, we should look to Burlington and learn from them. Thank you.
Okay, so Mayor, you have a chance to rebut, but first I just want to get back to the question. I do want a yes or no. If elected mayor, is there an idea regarding the local option tax that you intend to propose? Yes or no?
I would say no on the options tax. I believe there's other sources.
Mayor, would you like to rebut?
Just a couple of things I did pick up on. I announced the other night at the Board of Aldermen meeting that the city report is available, or is in,
Okay.
and will be available at town meeting day, which is actually the time most of the communities get their town reports out. Great place for people up to let's hope 3,000 people get out and vote, and I've got 3,000 copies. So they're going to be available at the polls. And I believe it's a little more extensive this year as far as some of the reporting, because we now have a new city treasurer who requested to have a lot of that, more of that information included in the report, and I believe you're going to see a lot of that. So.
And I hope you're right. That would be a great turnout, 3,000.
Yeah, that would be great,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
I hope for that. So Mike, it's your turn for the start of the next question. Okay. So the next question goes like this. The Board of Aldermen is considering an ordinance to prohibit future development outside of downtown from having internally illuminated signs and message signs. Alderman DePoy said this idea is a business killer. Do you support or oppose this new proposal?
I believe that in zoning, we currently have basically zoning for, as an example, residential and business. If taken to an extreme, no illumination, you wouldn't be able to see at night. With larger illumination, I believe those are reasonable in the commercial, highly traveled areas, the main corridors. I don't believe that signs or business signs should be illuminated in residential neighborhoods. And I would draw that distinction. So an area that would be zoned or considered a residential neighborhood should not have to basically deal with large illuminated signs. There may be a smaller one for basically visibility of, let's say, a nursing home or an existing business in those neighborhoods, the residential areas. But I believe that those should be grandfathered, for lack of a better description. But I believe that there should not be restrictions on illuminated signs in the commercial corridors.
Thank you. Mayor, I don't need to repeat it.
So the sign ordinance, it's something that's been worked on for up to 2 years by the Planning Commission. And it is now just getting into having the discussion at the Board of Alderman level. I've had a chance to review. It is an extensive document. It has a lot of moving parts, including the illuminated signs. I have some concerns with the ordinance, certainly with the size of the signs. It seems to be rather prohibitive. I would like to, have a discussion mainly with the business community. I think what hasn't happened up to this point, although I know the Planning Commission did have a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, I would like to have a public meeting where we invite all the business owners from all over the city to come in and give us their view of what they believe is something that's going to help them. As some of the new businesses that have come in, I've noticed that they are voluntarily putting in smaller signs. So that seems to be the trend. It's not these big, larger signs that you've seen over the years. And so I think, a lot of this stuff can be done, voluntarily without government telling them what you have to do. But it's, the building inspector does have some issues with enforcement of the way the old ordinance is written. I think it needs to be firmed up. And as far as the internal illuminated signs, there is appropriate places for those. I don't think they should be prohibited, certainly in the commercial corridors. There's some people that have very tasteful signs. They're done really well. Residential neighborhoods, they don't need any of those. So it's something that zoning can address. We're about to update our zoning ordinance, and I'm hoping that we can do the sign ordinance and the zoning ordinance more or less in concert, so we're not repeating our efforts.
Thank you, and Mike, you'll have a chance to rebut. I just want to say thank you you've both been very succinct and clear in your positions, and I appreciate that, and I think the viewers will too. So
Thank you. Back to the sign ordinance, I think it's important to know where the beef is. It's on the corner of 4 and 7 with the new Five Guys, Burger King, and the rest of the restaurants that are right there.
Wow, that's where you go, right? Mayor, any rebuttal to that?
No, I don't think I got a rebuttal to that.
All right then. Well, we'll move right on. And again, I thank you both. So the next question, so we're going to be starting back with you, Mayor, right? Mm-hmm. So, correct me if I get it wrong, Mike, will you? The next question is, interested local citizens have started organizing on Facebook to discuss and share ideas about our community's future, like Rutland, Vermont Think Tank and Rutland Economic Citizen Task Force. As mayor, will you solicit their input as you might the chamber or Reddick?
So I'm not familiar with either one of those groups. I'm sure after tonight I probably will be. But I am always interested in anyone that lives either inside the city or, well, particularly inside the city, but anywhere from the surrounding communities who have input to help us, on this whole myriad of issues that we have to deal with. That's why I try to get out and talk with people on an everyday basis, because a lot of them, the ones that are living it, sometimes it can be a little bit of a bubble. You get inside, in our case, City Hall. You're working away 8 hours a day, and you don't necessarily, know exactly, what's happening out on the street. And that's why I have an open door policy. I encourage people to call. I return their phone calls. I try to get out into the community as much as I can. And groups like this, citizens groups, which are start from the ground up, that's how you find out exactly what's happening. So I welcome their input, and I'm happy to talk with them at any time.
Thank you, David. Mike?
I think it's fabulous, and I think that any time that there can be open discussion and democracy, it's great, and it makes it more of a direct democracy than a representative democracy. Historically, I've done a lot of planning work, and I've done short-term plans and longer-term plans. And during that process, ordinarily what you do is you go to your constituents, your stakeholders, your citizens, your tourists, anybody that's interested and involved in the community, and you ask, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? It's referred to as a SWOT analysis. And that can now be done, as you're aware, electronically. And these groups are fabulous because it can be a thinkubator or an incubator space where you generate ideas that people and individuals can bring forward. An example of this is some of the smart house technology that's available out there. And you can control with your phone now a lot of what goes on in your home. And think about it this way, if we know there's rain coming, as an example, and we have these thinkubator or incubator spaces designed ways to basically automate the closing of these stormwater drains and other things like that to help the city manage and control its stormwater runoff. And within neighborhoods, if there are issues, let's say I'm going to call it the pothole patrol, we can geotag those potholes and the ones that would be brought to the attention and get the highest ranking as far as needing attention, we could say, okay, let's look at these and prioritize the application of the asphalt and our road crews to those that we receive from social media from the community that need repair.
All right, thank you, Mike. Mayor, anything to?
No, I don't
rebut
think
on
I have
that?
anything for that. No,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, so the next question then we go with you, Mike.
Okay.
Workforce being a key component of business recruitment and retention, Vermont is currently experiencing a workforce deficit. The previous mayor proposed refugees. What new idea would you propose to grow the Rutland workforce?
When I was in college, some of you know that I had my own business while I was in school. I basically had a catering truck. I went to UVM, where the Royal Tyler Theater is in front of the Lafayette building. It's University Place. And so they were closing a main cafeteria for the students that served probably 2,000 to 3,000 people a day. During the construction and renovation, they had nowhere to go. So some of them were diverted to my truck. I sold bagels and coffee. It was a great learning experience by way of business. I think that there's a lot of young entrepreneurs in the area that attend Stafford, that attend the College of St. Joe's, Mount St. Joseph Academy, CCV, Castleton, that if we would work with those students to provide them hands-on opportunities in some of these downtown storefronts by way of starting a business, working with the colleges. We had an idea that came up the other day, basically like a spirit store, where you'd be able to go in as, like an example, a bookstore and buy the t-shirts and hats and books and paraphernalia that goes with Rutland, MSJ, Castleton, CCV, St. Joe's, and the rest, and have students work there and learn about inventory, learn about business, learn about scheduling, learn about payroll. And so basically those incubator spaces could fill up some of these storefronts. And I think that that is the key to the future generations, having them understand and educate themselves as to how to run a business, but as importantly, that's where the fertile ground is for new and innovative ideas by way of software development, game applications. It's amazing how many of these youngsters play games. I know Champlain College has a very good program when it comes to gaming technology. Who would have thought years ago that you would have a discipline of gaming technology? But they come out and they do very well. And that's something that can be done from anywhere. There's institutions and organizations in Vermont that edit movies, that do animation. There's pockets of them. Some people know, some people don't. So those are the types of things that we could bring to Rutland, downtown, put them in the storefronts, and then robotics and artificial intelligence. Example, the other day, I believe it was MIT, they designed a snowblower that was run on a battery pack, and it was remotely controlled. And the next step is they're going to basically be able to have it kept within the geographic location of your driveway. You'll be able to sit inside and run the snowblower, in another example. So that's what I have for now.
Sounds really great, I just got to tell you.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So workforce development.
Yeah.
Well, I think I mentioned it earlier in some of my remarks. I've been working very closely with the state. The governor's put a lot of emphasis on workforce development. Down here, we have a great group of people through the web, and I think we need to continue those efforts in collaboration with our surrounding communities to do it together. You know, you need to provide an environment that is going to be welcoming to new residents. And I see a community that has good schools, safe neighborhoods, recreational opportunities, and try to build on some of our strengths. And I think the support of our local colleges. There's a couple of the colleges that are having some issues certainly CSJ. We hope that they are going to be able to continue to survive down there and thrive. And I know they are working very hard at that. Castleton has put a new plan into place. I think that their enrollment is starting to increase. Those are key ingredients for making our community welcoming and to provide, match up the folks that we have here with the jobs that are available. Workforce development, it's huge.
Absolutely. Mike, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree 100%, Dave. And the one thing that I notice is as Rutland ages, our demographics, we're continuing to age. We have an older population. Vermont as well. There's a need for medical care providers, nurses. My wife is a nurse at the hospital. Castleton has a nursing program. There was an observation made, I went to a state budget meeting the other night, that Castleton's fee or rate and or tuition all in is a little bit more expensive than the average. I truly believe that if we would work with Castleton, St. Joe's, CCV, to establish a focal point for medical care, specifically nursing and x-ray technology, we could do a bang-up business because the demand is there. I know that Rutland Regional Medical Center, example, can't find enough trained individuals. Those are good paying jobs where you can support a family, buy a home, go shopping, but they just can't find enough people that are permanent residents. They have to rely a lot upon what they refer to as travelers. We need to change that.
Mayor, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I would agree that there's a great program over at Castleton, and it has been for a long time, and has provided the Rutland Regional Medical Center with a lot of the folks that work up there now. And there is a shortage. There's a lot of traveling nurses that come into the medical center, and I'm sure your wife knows that. As my sister-in-law used to be in the nursing profession, knows that too. So those are the kind of partnerships that are going to build up the workforce that we need to go forward with. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both. All right, we're already on to the next question. So we'll start back with you, Mayor.
Okay.
What specific appointments to department heads will you be confirming or changing?
Well, that's a very interesting question that when I'm reelected, that we will sit down and, as I did when I was first elected, and have a discussion with each one of the department heads to find out whether or not they wish to stay, and then find out what the strengths and weaknesses of their department and how they feel things have been moving along, how their association they feel is with me and with the community at large, and then we will move ahead with that. But those are personnel issues. I don't think this is an appropriate place to talk about individual positions, but we'll do it on a case-by-case basis, and I have a great workforce. They're all very dedicated, and we're going to look at we'll look at having a very positive discussion with each one of them.
All right. Thank you, David. Want me to repeat it? Or?
I believe I can take it. My belief and approach would be more of a flattening, and in business there's something referred to as siloing, and oftentimes these silos are created because a person is associated with a specific department, and then unfortunately, historically, there was offices and walls that were created to house those individuals in the office. An example may be DPW has an office area, building and zoning has an office area, permitting has an office area. My observation would be is that we need to take an approach where we look across the organization, across the city needs, and say, okay, we have tasks, responsibilities, jobs to do. And I'm learning, so I would ask, as an example, the question, when the city streets are being dug up and considered by the civil engineering group and need flagging and or traffic control, is that something that we could have, as an example, the fire department participate in? They're on the clock, they're on salary, they could have the vehicles with them. Is there a way that we could find efficiencies similar to that? So that, as an example, you might be repairing a hydrant or basically doing a hydrant flush or a combination project. I know they had one done up near my house on the end of a dead-end road. So could the fire department participate in that and help the other employees of the city perform that work throughout that day by flagging and or other things that they're capable, they have the skill sets to do. So let's take an inventory of the skill sets that are with the existing employees throughout the city. There may be some people that know how to do something that we are not even aware of, and they're not in the right department to perform, therefore they can't contribute. How do we inventory those skill sets and abilities? Because there's a lot of great employees. How do we optimize and maximize those human resources and do it in the most efficient way possible? To a certain extent, it's knocking down those walls, removing those silos, and let everybody work cross-functionally, learning and supporting and training one another.
I hear your answer. I'm just wondered if you had any thoughts, Mike, on any specific department heads about confirming or changing.
Well, I would interview, talk with, discuss every department head's performance and what their belief is, what they bring to the city, what their experiences are best suited at. There may be some changes, but I want to back up just for a minute, because in the Herald article today, there was a discussion about the fire department, real briefly, okay? In 1974, I followed the fire trucks home from school to my home in Rutland Town, my parents' home in Rutland Town, and it was on fire. And basically what ended up happening is the property was gutted, but the fire trucks from the town, and then eventually assistance from the city, were able to extinguish that fire. So we were able to preserve our memories and things like that. It was a struggle. We had to live at the Holiday Inn for a while. One of the families here locally, the Rochons, took us in for a while. I'm not a typical body type, so I had issues with clothing. And not a lot of the area stores had my body type, so I had to go to Burlington to get some clothes. So the Red Cross came to our assistance. There was some other non-for-profits that helped us out. It was a very traumatic experience. Believe me, I enjoy, support, and know more than a lot of people will ever know about the value of a fire department and a police department and the Associated Public Works.
Okay. Mayor, I'm just going to give you a chance to rebut.
Okay. Well, thank you. Just a couple of quick things. One about working across departments.
Yeah.
You know, we have department head meetings once every 2 weeks, and they're very well attended, usually 100%. And those are the kinds of discussions that we have at those department heads. We find out what each of the department's going to be doing in the next couple of weeks. We find out if there's any way to, help each other out, and in a lot of instances there is. So that kind of stuff, does go on a regular basis. And as far as particular department heads, I just wanted to mention one thing, and that was that both our police chief and fire chief work by contract, and it doesn't necessarily come up every 2 years. It comes up at the length of their contract. So that's when those discussions happen with those two folks.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Now, we're going to take a minute to do a little quick lightning round here, I guess we'll call it. But it doesn't have to be that quick. We can take a minute. But on the ballot, I should say, there are a number of budget articles. And let's see, I think we'll go back to you, Mike, to start with. But just as sort of a lightning round, starting with Article number 1, whether you're in favor or opposed, shall the voters of the city school district approve the school board to expend $54,779,194, which is the amount the school board determined to be reasonably necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. And so the question, Article 1 is yes or no on the school budget.
I would say yes, Tom. And being in accounting, it's important to make sure the commas and the decimal places go in the right place.
Got that
So
right.
that's one of the key things. And so, yes, I definitely support our school systems. Both my children, myself, and my wife are byproducts, and many of my friends and neighbors have been through the Rutland Public Schools. Great teachers, great aides. But once again, I think we need to continue to look for efficiencies, and those efficiencies can be derived through, over here, technology. So they can be derived through technologies. So learning at home, taking those advanced placement classes, basically accelerating an individual's education. There are summer studies available and tutoring as well. It's a great organization. Let's keep it moving ahead. Let's see if we can find some efficiencies so as teachers retire, they don't necessarily need to be replaced.
Thank you, Mike. Mayor?
So I think, great schools has always been one of the things that we've excelled at here in the city of Rutland. It looks like it continues to be. I would support the school budget. And not only that, my wife's a school teacher, so I really wouldn't dare say anything else.
That's great. All right, then. So we'll start actually with you, David, because we should go back and forth like this. We'll go to Article number 2 and show the City of Rutland adopt a municipal general fund budget of $21,454,605, and I have a feeling I know the answer to that.
Well, there was a lot of work that was put in the last several months working on that budget, looking for ways to try to trim. We were able to save some money with our insurances and workers' comp rates, and came out with a budget that was nearly flat. There's going to be no tax increase for the taxpayers this coming year. Feel very good about that. So it's an enthusiastic yes.
Okay. Mike?
I would say yes, but if elected mayor, my first operating budget would be roughly $20 million. And as I explained earlier, I believe there are ways to track and capture capital improvements and investment that wouldn't need to flow through the operating expenses because they are long-term investments. So that would provide some relief to the taxpayers. I know there's money that's been collected that hasn't been spent, and that's great. And everybody should pat themselves in the back. But the taxpayers need to be considered. You know, when you do the math on a single-family property in Rutland and/or a two-family property, it's hard to make the numbers work even if you do your own work on the property. You're almost $5,000, it's just under $5,000 in an annual property tax bill. By the time you pay your water and sewer, you're $5,500 or better, approaching $6,000. That's $500 per month. So every time that we have to reach into that taxpayer's pocket, that's $400 or $500 on a 10% budget increase that they don't have to spend at the pizza shop or shopping or locally to stimulate business.
Mayor, anything?
No, I guess I would just add that, always been a middle-class taxpayer here in the city. We've never been, we've always been working people. I've been a salesman up to the time that I've now become mayor. My wife's been a school teacher. We've never had a whole lot of extra capital to spend. So I'm very sensitive to what the tax rates here in the city and what people are experiencing. So, we're going to continue to work very hard to try to reduce, or if not reduce, remain flat, the current tax rates and the current burdens that the city taxpayers are experiencing right now.
Thank you. So Mike, back to you. We've got bond articles on the ballot as well. And hopefully this will help our viewers too as they have to get through all this on March 5th. And we want to encourage them to go vote on the 5th as well and help make these decisions, right? So, but Article number 1 under the bond articles is, I'll kind of skip the dollar amounts a bit and just talk really about the issues, which is, and this one is general obligation bonds specifically for the wastewater treatment facility, digester repair or replacement, River Street force main replacement, Northwest Neighborhood combined sewer overflow, and Meadow Street combined sewer overflow project. That's a mouthful. Bond issue, Article number 1.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom, for the question. I thought you were going to refer to 007 James Bond there for a minute. But if we look at what's going on with these bond issuances, this is the type of thing that needs to be done to repair and improve this infrastructure. I understand that 100%. I have friends, associates, and business people that I work with that own property on Meadow Street, as an example. MSJ, the field's back up down there. That is a major area for infrastructure improvement. Now, going back to the whole combination pond thing, there are ways that we can potentially store some of that stormwater before it needs to be processed in ponds and or tanks and or other facilities. I know we're beginning to evaluate and investigate that. These bonds are critical. And once again, if we think about it, the $3 million and then the $7.4 million total $10.4 million. Now, I'm going to try to keep the math simple. Every $4.4 million is $1,000 indebtedness to the average homeowner. But these are like a mortgage, so they get paid over the bond's life, extensive life. So the number could be between $66 and $100 roughly for these bonds to be issuance each year, but they're paid for over time. But that's where we can pull back some of those people that are working on those capital investment projects, take them out of operating budget and have it be a capital investment project. Thank you.
So will you be voting yes or no on that?
I'll be voting yes.
Thank you. Mayor?
So I will be voting yes also, and I believe the majority, as I can see it right now, of the people in the city will be supporting it. I certainly hope so. I would encourage them to. I would encourage them to get educated on what these projects are. But historically, and in particular in the last 10 or 15 years, city government has really paid a close attention to what the needs are. We were falling behind for an awful long time. You mentioned 150-year-old pipes. They are all through the city, not just in the southwest neighborhood. They're up in my neighborhood, which a lot of this work is going to be done in. And it's critical for the future of the city, to any economic development, for just being able to operate going forward. We had a public hearing last night over at the intermediate school where the commissioner explained to, unfortunately, a light crowd, but there was some people there and they asked good questions, and they wanted to get educated on exactly what these bonds were for and what's going to be achieved. Luckily, it looks like there's going to be a bond that we had previously gone out with for that's going to be retired at about the time that the repayment's going to start on this one. So there's going to be no net increase on the property taxpayer going forward. So this is an issuance which I believe is out for 30 years, and I think it's a good investment for the city of Rutland.
Interesting. Mike?
So yeah, I'll review basically what you said, David. So you have an issuance and a retirement at the same time. So there may be no net increase to the property taxpayer, right? So we need to do a longer term plan. So with an aging schedule, assets and liabilities, so we can do that into the future as well. And the other thing is that Patrick Leahy just announced $20 million for Champlain watershed infrastructure improvements. So I'm going to go up there, see Mr. Leahy, Mr. Welch, Senators Leahy, Welch, and Sanders, and say, wait a minute, don't forget about Otter Valley, Moon Brook, which is part of the Champlain Valley. How much of that can we bring down here? And then also Welch met with yourself and others on the infrastructure there up in Montpelier, and it was great to see that. And I was up there the prior week with the mayor's meeting as well, understanding what's going on with clean water. One thing I came up with is that we might want to consider a water efficiency utility, much the same way we do energy efficiency utility, help homeowners and other people learn how to use less water. Thank you.
You have a rebuttal?
Just real quick, I guess, as far as the long-term plan, my predecessor in work with the DPW commissioner at the time put together what he saw as $100 million, look out into the future of what the needs were for the city. So not each project has been defined, but there's been, kind of a framework for what we need. So you have to. You have to figure out how much we can afford and what the greater needs are. And I think that a lot of that work has been done.
Excellent. So then there's just one other bond article. It's Article number 2, and I'll read it for the viewers. To show the City of Rutland issue general obligation bonds, again, in the amount of not to exceed $3 million, subject to reduction from the receipt of available state and federal grants and aid for the purpose of making public highway improvements. Namely, replacement of culverts on Park Street, Church Street, Allen Street, Grove Street, Lincoln Avenue, and rehabilitation of Grove Street Bridge number 25. And I think we're back to you, David, to start
You are.
that one. And
Yep.
that's a yes or no, but you can expound on it.
Sure, of course. I will support that. I think this has been a well thought out plan. It's actually an extension of our original bridge bond, which was put in place about 6 or 7 years ago, that worked on some of our larger bridges, East Creek or River Street Bridge and the Ripley Bridge, along with 2 or 3 other bridges that were smaller around the city. So this is part 2 of that. The other one, we're finished up the work. Again, this is going to come in at a time where there's a previous bond that is going to be retired. So hopefully there's going to be no net increase on that either. So these are bridges that are unfortunately in much disrepair. They've been investigated both by state and local officials, and we've given them all ratings of whether they're poor or fair, and most of them unfortunately are falling into the poor category, and it's time to do the work. Again, I think city taxpayers understand the need for that. Infrastructure repair is high on their priority list, certainly is high on mine, and I think we're hopefully going to see a positive result in that.
Thank you. Mike?
Now, is it my understanding that one of those bridges is near the country club?
Correct.
So I guess I'd ask whether there's going to be a cart path and ball retrievers available on the side of the bridges to retrieve the balls from the watershed.
Not indicated in the article.
So, but moving on from that, I think it's great. And I think it shows our commitment to infrastructure improvement and clean water. Once again, can we get, and it appears as though the bond issuance article suggests that there may be less funding requirement, but we have to ask up to the $3 million and hopefully get some matching or other funds.
That's the way it's, yes.
Thank you.
Great, yeah.
So I would support.
Thank you. Anything else to add to that?
No,
Mayor?
I think that's good.
Yeah. So there's no rebuttal to the, that's good. All right. So you guys have been amazing tonight, and because of that, we're right on schedule. So I've decided as moderator, because I have a little bit of flexibility, to say I think we should allow you guys to do closing statements. How about that? So because we're taking turns, we will
I
go.
went opening, so perhaps it's up to
Well,
you.
we're going back and forth.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
You're next.
That's
and-
fine.
Yeah, I'm moderator.
Oh, okay. You're in charge, Tom. Can I ask you some
But Mike,
questions?
thank you.
Can I ask you some?
Please do, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, in your responsibilities for Brock, what is your total annual budget that Brock basically has under your control?
So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to answer the question, and then I do want you to have a closing statement.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm happy to report. It's $5 million.
Okay.
And unfortunately for us, it's about $5 million in and $5 million out. We serve about 12,000 people in the counties of Rutland and Bennington each year, all of low income or living in poverty. We're helping them through a crisis and hopefully moving their lives forward. And that path forward is about 50% of what we do now, and try to get really people to what we call a sustainable path forward. But we wish there was more landing in the middle, but we are happy to report, though, that we're doing it efficiently and effectively and literally changing lives. How's that for an answer?
Oh, it's very good,
All
Tom.
right,
And I appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you, Mike.
Brock does, and all the nonprofit agencies in and around Rutland County and the state of Vermont.
Agreed.
You know, this year, the first of the year, my wife says, you know, it's time for you to start exercising. You and I used to go to the spa together. And I said to her, my response was this. I said, I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to run for mayor and treasurer. She didn't know what to think of that response. But so started my journey here in our democracy. You know, I've been a resident for more or less 50 years and or owned property for the last 30 years in and around Rutland City. I've experienced the roller coaster ride like the rest of you in the audience have. I worked at General Electric in 1986, second shift. I had my own business first shift. I worked second shift. I helped the gentleman on the floor learn the inventory control system. I took some accounting classes from them. It was a great experience to understand what goes on at GE. And I was in both plants, and so I got to see what went on. GE, General Electric, is a critical foundation for our economy. We need to continue to keep that organization here, and we need to find a way to train and to educate the next generation of GE employees. I know for a fact they're having a hard time finding qualified employees with the prerequisite math and other science skill sets. We need to find a way to solve that. Then we look at the Rutland Regional Medical Center. You know, fortunately or unfortunately, it's become a large employer because we have a substantial health need in this community as it continues to age. There are many times where there are not even enough beds to accommodate the patients that come into Rutland Regional Medical Center from the emergency room to the other floors. We need to find a way to supplement and augment that. And once again, the critical things is training and educating people. They can start as volunteers. They start as students. Those are still resources that can be called on to provide assistance and aid to those patients. And then have the licensed medical professionals take it to the next level. We look at this community, we have great opportunities. We need to work together to find those opportunities, those solutions, come up with those new ideas. You know, John Deere was born in Rutland, Vermont. Unbelievable success story, right? He was born here, moved to Brandon, moved to Middlebury. Then he went out west because he almost went bankrupt. But hundreds of billions of dollars are generated by the John Deere Corporation. You can go to Home Depot and these other suppliers, and you can ride or buy a John Deere tractor. It's an amazing story. One of the first electric motors was done by Davenport in Brandon. We have the minds, we have the intelligence, we have the next generation. So once again, working together, we can make this an increasing growth area. We can, by fixing the transportation, get more people here more efficiently. We can work together to improve neighborhoods and all the homes in the neighborhoods by finding a way to help those individuals fund whether it's the energy efficiency improvements. We need to find a way, we're the solar city, to offset $500,000 in fossil fuel purchases that we have every year that run through our budget. How can we basically remove that $500,000 in diesel, number 2 fuel oil, and gasoline? Because we're the solar city, we should be able to do that. Deploy those students to learn how to do the solar and other technologies that could make that more efficient. We have the bike pass, great step in the right direction. We need to continue those paths so that people can ride bikes, and there's bikes that are assisted bikes now. So you can move pretty rapidly as well, right? And then we need to attract more people to the area. Google, as an example, has a meeting annually in the Killington area. I don't know if people realize that. But to have them show up in Rutland County, in the Rutland region, is amazing. Think about what we could do if we could get a couple of Google offices here. A lot of intellectual property, a lot of high-paying jobs, a lot of great opportunities. And it's other companies that are software associated. And I thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm proud to be a Rutland, Vermont neighbor, resident, and participate in this night's evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening and participate in this democracy. Thank you, Dave. Competition is good. Friendly competition is better. Thank you.
Very good, Mike. Thank you. Mayor, you get the final word.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So I guess I want to thank the voters of the city of Rutland for the opportunity to serve as your mayor. It's been a challenging and humbling experience, but I've never forgotten one thing, and that's I work for you. I work for you, the taxpayers. I want to build on the successes of the past 2 years, and I want to meet the challenges head on. I'm going to continue to have an open door policy. I'm on the street talking to people every day. I'm going to continue to do that. I will answer your phone calls together, collaboratively, the mayor, the board of aldermen, and most importantly, you, the taxpayers and the voters. You will be the ones to move the city forward for the next 2 years and beyond. Thank you. I want to politely ask for your support on Election Day, and please, whatever you do, get out and vote. I appreciate your time tonight, and thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Michelle Messier, as your grandparents called you,
Merci beaucoup.
and David Allaire, mayor of the city of Rutland currently, and both looking to become the next mayor of the city of Rutland. So on March 5th, we want to encourage you to make sure you get out and vote, or vote early at City Hall now during their office hours. It's very easy, but most importantly, that you cast your ballot and you help make these decisions on all the articles that were discussed tonight, including the infrastructure articles and so forth, the budgets for the city and the school. And these two candidates, Mike and Dave, who are running for the office of mayor. You know, it's not an easy thing to do, to throw your hat in and to have these kind of conversations so publicly. So I give you both credit and thank you for putting your names on the ballot and considering being the mayor of the city of Rutland, which is always not something that you take on as a hobby, that's for sure. I also want to thank all of you for watching PEG TV tonight, and recognize again Chelsea Tice particularly, who is the program coordinator for Channel 21 right here on Comcast. Thank you for watching on PEGTV.com and social media. This is one of our tremendous resources in the Rutland region, community access television. So we cherish it and we appreciate it, and we encourage you to support it as well. And so we'll see you right back here on Tuesday, March 5th at 7 p.m. live for the election night coverage, and we'll let you know who the winners of each race around the county, not just Rutland City, are that night. So again, Tom Donahue for PEG TV, live election night coverage Tuesday. See you then.